Today's daf is daf lamed. Okay, we're learning about that a person has to have a 3-year chazakah, and otherwise, where's your contract to prove that the property is yours? So now the Gemara is going to learn a number of dinim, a number of cases, and to do with a chazakah versus the original owner who claims that this land is not yours. So let's start with case number one. Ahuda Amalei Lechabre. Somebody once said to his friend, "My boy is behind base. What are you doing in this house?" Amalei, he said to me, "Noch zevanti. I bought it from you. Where's my contract? I've been here for 3 years already." Amalei, so the person answers him back, "Bishukei broi havoi. I was away. I was away." Remember last time we learned that, in fact, the Rif learned that previous Gemara is similar, but Shchayni Gavoy means I was away. But here he's saying clearly, Bishuke, and they had an argument. But here, Bishuke Broi Havoy, I was far away. When Daf Lamed Amud Aleph towards the bottom of the page. Amalei said to him, Isli Sadi. So the vendor says back that, sorry. So the buyer says back, but I know that you were in town every year for a while. So you should have protested if you thought that the property was being squatted. So with Daf Lamed Amud Aleph towards the bottom of the page, we can do a number of cases where there are disputes between a pre-existing landlord and or owner, a vendor, and the purchaser. They're arguing as to squabbling as to whether the guy ever bought it. Anyway, he says to him, "What are you doing in my property?" And the guy says, I have been here over 3 years. And the vendor said, "I was away. I couldn't protest." So the buyer said, "But I know you were in town. Now, why couldn't he protest overseas? We learned before, but we also learned if there's a time of war, then it doesn't, or very far away, and there's no shiyaras matsuyas, nobody's traveling, then a macha far away doesn't help, because this person couldn't have heard it." Anyway, he said, "I was far away." He said, but Eastly Sadi, about 6 lines at the bottom, I have witnesses, the Cholshasa every year have a usis plus and yom. It came for 30 days. Yeah. Amalei said, "You're right. Plus and yom, but I was so preoccupied in the marketplace I was selling that I didn't have a chance to look around. I have another house in the city, so I stayed there, and I didn't have a look around. I tried to look around in this house over here. So therefore, I didn't protest. I wasn't aware at all that I had to protest." Okay, so Omar Rava says, Rava, that we grant the vendor that kind of. It is possible that a person for 30 days comes to town and he wants to, that's the big market, the big fair, that he doesn't have the time or the headspace to go look around at his real estate, his assets, and therefore it's a good excuse. And therefore he wasn't aware, and it's a valid time that he wasn't aware. And you should have known that he's away. You should have preserved your star longer. Some Rishonim say that if he was there for more than 30 days, that this allowance is only 30 days. But if it'd be 31 days, that's it. Then you should have taken away a few hours to check out your real estate, what's happening with it. Okay. Omar Rav, sorry. Next case. So that's case number one. Case number two. These are all to do with the Rav. For a person as his friend, my boy is by Hayata. What are you doing in this property? So Levi is in the property, and Reuben comes to him and says, "Hey, it's my house, it's my property. What are you doing here?" And Levi said, "But I bought it from Shimon." Mm-hmm. The Amali and Shimon told me, there's an argument whether actually Shimon told them yes to give or he knows, but Shimon told me this is of the Minach. Shimon told me he bought it from you. Now it seems to the Gemara here he didn't have 3-year chazaka. It doesn't say anywhere that he had a 3-year chazaka. Amalei, he said to him, "At lav kamoides, don't you?" So what happened there? You're admitting the high ada didihu. You're admitting that this land belongs to me. You just said that you bought it from Shimon, who bought it from you. That means what you're acknowledging is that you're admitting. I have no witnesses. Reuben says, "I have no witness. The land is mine," but you just said it's mine. You said that Shimon bought it from me, and Shimon told you that. You didn't invite me, so therefore I have nothing to do with you. I don't know you. I never sold you, and I'm claiming that I never sold the land. So my argument is with Shimon. So Zil, goodbye. Lav bal devarim mediyah. You are not my disputant. You have nothing to do with me. I have nothing to do with you. The vendor is 100% right. So what happened was that Levi says, Shimon told me when I bought the property from him that it was his. Now, even if Shimon has a 3-year chazakah, for 3 years, so L'chayre has a chazakah. Yeah. So why do we give it back to Reuben? because the chazaka and the chazaka is only a chazaka if there's a tiny that comes with it. But what is this tiny? That I bought it from Shimon. Fine. But who said it belonged to Shimon? So you're tiny, and now that he's disputing it, he's saying that it never belonged to Shimon. So what's your tiny? The chazaka doesn't help Shimon, helps you. But so we believe you. And what? That you bought from a guy that maybe he was a charlatan. Maybe he never owned the land in the first place. And now, if Levi would have said, I know that Shimon bought the property. If Levi would have said, I know because I saw you selling it to him. Then Levi has a migri. He has a migri. He could have said, I bought it directly from you. So therefore, because he could have said, I bought it directly from you, and instead he's saying it that he bought it and I saw, so then we would believe him. The problem is, in this case, he didn't say that I saw that I bought it from you. He didn't say that I saw you sell it to Shimon. He didn't say that at all. He just said, Shimon told me. Okay, so Shimon told you. Therefore, he's not believed. Okay. Next Gemara, we're off Lamed and Beis, 3 lines on top. So we're going through a number of cases here. Number of cases. A person says to his friend, my boy is Bahai Ada. What do you do? So a number of dinim, a series of halachas, a dinim, where somebody is a muhzik in a property, and he's market for 3 years, and the original owner comes and disputes it. What happens? So case number 3. The guy says to a friend, my boy is Bahai Ada. What are you doing in his property? I bought it from that person, and I had it for 3 years. Malay said to him, Planya Gazlanu. That guy was a Gazlan. Again, he was a charlatan. Malay. So what's this case? Exactly the same case as before. But there's another level here. Amalei said to him, but Isli Sadi, I have evidence, the buyer says, I have evidence that I went to your house and I consulted you whether I should buy this property. But Amar Tuli, and you told me, Zil Zavin, go buy it. So now that you told me to buy, doesn't that prove that it was a proper sale? Very good. No. Amalei, he says the following, it's a similar concept. The guy who is a Gazlan, I can't deal with him. He's intimidating and he's not a mensch. I can't deal with him. You, I could. So I'll take you to the Nintendo and I'll win. Big Machlaik is a shayim. If you know what's saying, Amar Rav said, Dine Ka'amalei. He's right. I want that he takes the property back. And just because I gave you advice, because you have no raya that the property was ever sold to this middleman, because you're not saying that you saw me sell the property to the middleman. The guy, the middleman, told you that he bought the property. So you have a chazak, fine. So but it's a chazak without a taina, because how do you know that the sale was ever a proper sale? Your argument is because you consulted me and you said a good idea, because I was very happy that you'll end up with the property. I could take it and tell you, you're from me, you listen to a bezdin, so you'll give him back the property. Big machlek is a shonim if the buyer can turn around to his vendor, to this Gazlan, and get his money back. The Rashbam, the Rosh, and many say, yeah, of course, he was a Mekar Tos, so he sold you a property that wasn't his. Other Rishonim say no. They say that the middleman can say, you who told you to be moide that the property belonged to the original guy? You put your foot in your mouth. If you wouldn't have been moide the property ever belonged to the original guy, then you would have had a migui. We would have believed you because you could have said that it was never that person in the first place. You could have said it was never that guy in the first place. And by you saying it's your property, but you sold it to the middle guy, you ruined yourself. You no longer have that migui. You could have said you never you're in the first place. Why does he still have that migui? So here comes in this concept called the migui lemafreya. When you come to the migui, you could have reverted your whole story. If at the time you didn't think of saying that thing because there's no benefit in it, you thought what you're saying now is better, then it's called a migui to go back, a migui lemafreya lo'amarin. And that's why once you've admitted that the property is mine, you can no longer say, "Oh, but I have a migui because the property was not yours." Once you admit the property is his, and you sold it to this person, and this person unsold it to you, you ruined your migui. Now, you consulted. We'll learn now a series of cases of chazakas where the chazaka doesn't work because the original person comes along and says that it was my field that you bought. What happened was the person who moved into the field is saying, "I bought it from someone else." So Levi says, "I bought it from Shimon," who Shimon told me that he bought it from Reuben. And Reuben says, well, I don't know about Shimon. He never bought anything from me. So in case number 1, Levi, let's even if Levi has a chazaka, it's a chazaka without a taina. All you're saying is you bought it from Shimon. So what? But what does Shimon have to do with anything? I'm saying he never was his, and you have no proof. If you would have said that you saw him buy the fields, and then you have a migu, you could have said you bought it directly from me. But you didn't say that. You said that he told you. Okay, he told you. So it's not a really, it's not a proper, it's a chazaka without a taina. The next case is very similar, but the buyer added one more layer. He said, "But I asked you advice. Should I buy the field? You told me to buy the field. Doesn't that prove that it was a genuine sale?" And he says, "No, I want you to buy the field because I know that you listen to the Torahs. And I was going to go take you to the Torah, take him to the Torah, but it wouldn't work. So I took you. I'm happy." So the Chayya, the Gemara says,
isn't that like sit in Michel Lifnei Yiver? I mean, if he's giving him terrible advice.
A good question. So if you hold like those Rishonim that what do you call it? That the guy gets his money back, then you're right. There's no to the buyer. There's no real loss. He'll get his money back. If you hold the Rishonim that the buyer does not get his money back, then you can ask the same question. But again, who said that the buyer had to admit that originally belonged to the vendor? It was a buyer messed up himself. But you're right. It's a good question. Why isn't it giving bad advice to a person?
And they have a mind.
Exactly. Yeah. But good question. But over there is talking about that you didn't have a reason to. Here you're encountering a loss. Somebody stole your property. And here's a way for you to retrieve it. So it's not like you're being selfish and whatever. You're doing it to save yourself. Over there in the Torah, when it's talking about this, Naiva generally is talking about, I have nothing. It doesn't owe me anything. I just covered it. I want it. And I'm giving you bad advice so that I can take advantage of you, exploit you, which is a little bit different. So maybe it doesn't fall in the category of Naiva in this case. Good question. Says the Gemara, this L'chayre only follows one Tana, Admon, not the Chachamim. What's the story there? It's not learned. Somebody claims that this field is a stolen field. But the Chasam Aleh Be'ed, the vendor signed, Levi went and bought a field from Shimon, and Reuben's claiming that the field was stolen and blah, blah, but the vendor, Reuben, actually signed the contract of sale between Shimon and Levi. What happens then? So Adma says, Adma says, doesn't mean it's a concession. Reuben can argue, just because I signed it, because I wanted you to have the same svara. I wanted you to end up with the field so I can take it in Torah. I know that you were Tzayis Dinah. The other guy does not listen to the Torah. Okay, Hasheni Noichli, it is Kosherman. It sounds exactly like what Rava said. But the Chacham disputed. Chacham Ibid es Chusay. The moment he signed that star and he agreed, he consented to that sale, that means it's a real sale. That Reuben is forfeiting his right. That's what he's saying. Shimon had a right to sell it. So the Chayid, it seems that Rav is passing like Admon when the halach should be like that. Says the Gemara, I feel Tamer Rabban. But answer no. Rav's psak conforms to the Rabban as well. What's the difference in the case of Ksuvas here? Hasam of the Le Maisa. Over there, he went much further than over here. Over here, he just gave him verbal advice. It's good that you go buy it. Over there, he participated in the sale. By signing the shtar, he participated in the sale. That is the Chacham say is a forfeiture of his rights. But just to give advice, and now you know what the background behind advice. It's his story. And he says that. It happens that people can give advice because he's thinking about what's for his benefit. So Rabbi's psak can conform with everybody. Next case. I would have the guys as a friend. My boy, I was in this land. I bought it late, so I bought it from Shimon and I had a number of chazaka. Amalei planya gazlonahu. He says so. Reuben accuses Shimon the vendor as being a ganef. Same story here. What happened? And there's always another nuance there. Amalei by Isli Sadi. I have witnesses. The osis beurta. I have witnesses that you came at night. But Amartling, you told me Zovnanella. You told me to go ahead and buy it on my behalf. You, Reuben, told Levi, you know what? Do me a favor. Shimon has a property on sale. Buy it because he's selling it really cheap. And buy it. Now, this is much more than just advising. You're buying it back. Why would you buy back your own property? So doesn't that prove that already mamish proves that it's not yours and you agreeing that Shimon had the right to sell the property? In other words, even though it didn't end up with Reuben, it ended up with Levi, but Levi's using that as a basis that the property really is a proper sale because you wanted me to buy it on your behalf, and I have witnesses to that. Amalei again, if he could work his way out, he said, "Amina, I said is that you know what, the property's worth $1,000. This guy's a ganav. He doesn't care about the value. He needed to earn some money. He was selling it for hundreds. I thought, you know what? For $100, I'll pay the extra $100, and I don't have to. I can avoid it and trade it with toyenim costs and with the zablos and the muchnish and the kapjanish and all the headaches I'm going to have from it. I'm willing to pay if it's a cheap price, discounted price, even though it's my property that I'm buying back. And I should be seething and angry, but it's worth sometimes, just to have peace of mind." Amar Rava, so Rava's it happens quite often that if you can, for a few dollars, avoid a machlekes, people would rather go down that route than just to have machlekes. Next case, a guy said to a friend, "My boy, having his land, numbers of planning, again, Levi said, but Mashim and what? And I ate a number of chazak, I was there for 3 years. Malay, so Ruvain, the Reuben said, okay, this is different. Reuben's not saying that I'm the real owner of the property. He's saying I am, but not because I pre-owned it. I bought it the year before you bought it. He sold you my property. I bought it 4 years ago, and you bought it 3 years ago because you said you had a chazaka. So therefore, it's mine. My star gazum's yours. Malay, so the guy says back, all I said was years. I had it for chazaka. I didn't say 3 years. I maybe had 20 years. I just said chazaka. So you automatically assume that I had it exactly for 3 years. So your star predates mine. I had it for many more years. So where's my star? I lost it because nobody protested and I lost it, which we learned before. So he says that I mean, you think I meant 3 years? I meant many years. And I'm not amending my argument. I never bothered going into details because it's irrelevant. Omar Rava says yes. This is a constant to people's behaviors. Yes, people call things a chazak even though it might be 5 years, 7 years. Mili, that is interesting. He had to have a chazaka of the Ochla Sheva. He had to have a chazaka 7 years. He at least had it 7 years. Why? This guy bought it 4 years ago. If you let's say claim you bought it 6 years ago, but you claim you bought it 6 years ago, and somebody went by, you lost it. 2 years into that, the vendor wrote a star and sold it to Reuven. That is the greatest macha possible. He made a macha. So because he made a macha, so therefore you have no right in that field anymore. You're there right now 4 years, more than 3 years. Since we all know that you came there with the wrong pretenses and you have a chazaka without a taina. Remember, every chazaka needs a taina. Your taina is you bought a property. You never bought you brought a property that was already sold to somebody else. So you didn't, because he was meicha, you're being there. This guy has a star. So if he sold it to you the year later, he didn't sell you his property. So it's a chazaka. We believe you. But what? You bought it from that guy, but that guy had no right to sell it to you because it wasn't his anymore. The kodesh chazaka the high started the house. But if you only had it 6 years ago, ein lach macha gedrei lazu. That is the greatest macha you can have. This is very meicha. Next case. Two people come forward to a bezin. Each one claims that this particular item belonged to their father. So they're saying, and I'm the heir. I'm the Yiddish. It's mine. Hi, I see Sahadi. So one guy, Reuben, brought witnesses. He brought witnesses that he used to belong to his father, and therefore he's the rightful heir. But the other person, I see Sahadi, brought witnesses. The Ochla Shnei Chazaka. He brought witnesses that he had a Chazak. 3 years. That's why he has no documented proof, but he was 3 years, nobody protested. Omar Rabba, so Rabba says, the guy who is machzik should be believed. Why? He has a very strong migut. Why should he lie? If he wanted to, he could. Now that he has proof that he was the chazaka, all he had to do was change his tiny claim and say, yes, it was your father's and yours, but I bought it from you. And Baharaya, I'm here 3 years, and nobody protested. I bought it from you, and I had it for the chazaka, and he wouldn't believe because he has ate him for 3 years, and So we should believe him that when he says Zeh Shalav Loiseh, we should believe. Amalei Abaye said, Mali l'shaker b'mokem edim lo yaminim. Mali l'shaker is a migu. What does he gain from? Why should he lie? But so what? So what do you want to believe? That it belonged to his father. But the other person has edim that belong to his father. And even though Mali l'shaker is a very strong birur of verification that he's probably saying the truth, it was quite compelling, but not when it versus edim. So it seemed that Rabbah argues with Abaya, and actually in the Gemara is a machlekes Ma'ala l'shakim mokamedim. That's how strong Ma'ala l'shakim is. There are many steers to this, so there's an interesting idea that the Achreinim want to say. There's a difference between, and this is how they answer reconcile a lot of the Gemaras that seem sometimes it does work. They say there's a difference between Eidim and Anan Sadi. That they want to say that Anan Sadi means we don't know what happened in this particular case, but we know how generally it works. We are convinced that this is definitely what happened. It's called Anan Sadi. We're the witnesses, even though we weren't there, but we're so convinced that Anan Sadi is stronger than Eidim. It's such a compelling logic, is stronger than Eidim. So even though you have arguments about Migui, whether Mala the Shaka against Eidim, what you have right here, Rabba and Abaya, others say it's Rabba, and then Rabba changes mind, agree with Abaya. But if there's an argument, here's an argument, but when it comes to Anan Sadi, everyone will agree that a Migui does not override Anan Sadi, because a Migui is logic. Eidim is not logic. Eidim is Xeris HaKasa. The Rambam says, Moshe and Aaron together we would be able to accept them in the Bezin, but so Eidim is Xeris HaKasa. But two guys, two shmos will be believed in Bezin. So it's Xeris HaKasa. That's Abishneim, we have Eidim, we believe them, and that's it. But Anan Sadi is a very compelling logic, and that's far stronger than the logic of a Migui, because not everybody's so smart. That comes up, or sometimes you think that if I sound too good, you can have a svara. Every svara has a counter svara. Sometimes you sound too good, you say, oh, it looks too neat. I'd rather look, a little bit not so great in there, but it's still it's good enough for me. Anyway, so then he said, then he went and he modified his tiny. And he said, when I said it's my father, I didn't really mean it's my father. Of course I knew it's your father. But the Zavanti Minach, I bought it from you. That's it. He changes his tiny. Or now he's explaining now his tiny. He's not changing, he's explaining. That's the question. The high, the when I said it was my father's, it's just like my father's. If it would have been my father's, I'll be the rightful heir. So Taka was my father's. I bought it from you, but it's mine, just like as if I yashed it myself. That's what I meant. So the question is, you're not allowed to modify your tainas. You're not allowed to change your taina. You can't change your taina. Is this called a change, an alteration, or is this called an explanation? This explanation, do we say that he came up with he's a very he's cunning and he's sly and he came up with some kind of he's very chitra, or we say no, that we say that this is what he meant all along. So toyin v'chayz v'toyin ain't toyin v'chayz toyin. So can he now explain himself or not? Because without this explanation, definitely will pass going to go to Reuben. His witnesses that belong to his father. So you have a chazaka, but in Ma'ala l'shakim mokamedim you don't say. But here now suddenly explained that what he meant was I bought it from you. In that case, if he would have said outright, I bought it from you, and I have a chazaka, of course he'd believe him. But he didn't say that. He said it's my father. Now he's explaining what he meant when he said my father. I bought it from you. It's like ironclad. Ula has every right to, because he's not changing his taina. He's explaining what he meant. And the Doy says you cannot. Even that is considered a change. In other words, if we would have just heard that, no way in the world on our own we would interpret his words to say that's what he meant. He had to come along and say. So the Doy says the moment he had to come along and explain, so without his explanation, we would never think of that. Then that's called changing your ages. It's no good. And then the other one says no, since he's explaining his words and it could mean taka that's good enough. Now, even the Ula says he can do that, but clearly enunciated. It's my father's, never your father's. Then the Einu here come along and he said, what I meant was it's like it was never your father's. That doesn't work. But now, what about the What happens in front of Bezin, he said whatever he said, which he lost the case, or he's going to lose the case. But like Ton and say, then he went outside, and then he came back in. Suddenly, Viton, he came along. Now, Ula said before that if he explains his taina, that we accepted. What happened? He went outside first, then he came back in, and he said, "This is what I meant." In this case, Ula agrees he cannot come along. You know why? My time at Tanasa Agmana, he must have spoken to somebody who explained to him, who he said, "Help, I need help," and that guy with the Fisher cup came along and said, "This is what you meant. We don't trust you anymore." So Ula, in that case, once you step out of Bezin and you come back, maybe somebody else had an input. Umoid in the Herdoi, and the Herdoi says that you cannot modify your taina. Will be moide heicha de omala. But if he says later, instead of saying, "Itaka never was my father's, it was always your father's, but I bought it just like with my father's," Ula says, the Herdoi says, "I don't accept it." But if he would have said, what I meant was that my father bought it from your father. So the poil, I yashed from my father. So everything I said was correct. I never said it was never your father's. We know it was your father's 20 years ago, but my father bought it from you 10 years ago, and I yashed it. That's even the doy's made. That's not called a modification. He's still sticking to his original taina, just explaining what happened, the circumstances. Is my father that bought it from you, so he's still maintaining shalavoisai. The chayzev that's permitted. The heicha dishtoi milavre. One more case. What happens outside of court when they're having this dispute? This guy says shalav voisai, and this guy says chazagim shalim, and he doesn't explain himself at all. The later he just says it's mine. My father, passed it on to me. But also the beidina. But then when they enter the court, Vuitton, and he tainas whatever that my father bought it from your father or whatever, or it was really your father's, but I bought it from him. The Chayyot said, everyone agrees he's allowed to do that. My time, outside said differently. People don't want to keep their main trump card, secret, till they come in front of Bezin. So he doesn't want the other person to be able to prepare a response, which is nothing wrong. So therefore, he's believed that afterwards. I'm going to name a nona doina. I am from the doi. But I still hold like Ula, the toyin v'chayze in the case where he explains himself and it could fit into the original words he said, we'll accept that explanation. Toyin v'chayze. You can have a right to explain yourself, and you can do that again. Okay, we'll stop here. See you tomorrow, Mr. Shem. Have a good day.